Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the February 10th Port Washington Board of Education meeting. At this time, I would like to ask the board to rise for the flag salute. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Thank you. At this time, we turn to the district clerk to take a roll call.
Adam Epstein. I'm sorry.
Close.
I apologize. Adam Smith.
Here.
Thank you. Julie Epstein. Here. Sandra Alvarez. Here. Deborah Brooks. Here. Rachel Gilliard.
Not present.
Lynette Malconian. Here. Jessica Mawani. Here.
Thank you. Okay. At this time, I'd like to make a motion to adopt the February 10th, 2026 agenda. Do I have a second? Ms. Brooks, all in favor? 6-0. Today's agenda is adopted. And with that, we are excited to hear the sounds of the Schreiber Jazz Ensemble under the direction of Mr. Christian Crawford. The board, we can move to the seats.
Hi everyone, my name is Mr. Crawford. We are going to play a Glenn Miller standard. This one's called In the Mood. Hope you enjoy.
Wow, I am impressed. That was pretty good. Okay. At this time, I'd like to make a motion to recess to executive session to discuss the employment of particular persons and board development. Do we have a second? Ms. Brooks, all in favor? 6-0. 6-0. At this time, we are going to recess to executive session for the reasons stated above, and we will be back in about an hour, so I'm guessing around 7:45, and we'll see you then. Everybody back? Okay. I'd like to make a motion to reconvene in public session. Do we have a second? Ms. Epstein, all in favor? I don't think, Rachel, can you vote? You haven't been roll called. You can, right? I don't think you can. Yeah, 6-0. Okay. Roll call. Can I call in district clerk for a roll call, please?
Adam Smith.
Here.
Julie Epstein. Here. Sandra Alvarez. Here. Deborah Brooks. Here. Rachel Gilliard.
Here.
Nanette Maconian.
Here.
Jessica Mawani.
Here.
Kaylin Costello.
Here.
Thank you very much. Welcome to tonight's Board of Education meeting. Since we have two presentations and we're already running quite a bit late, I'm going to keep these remarks very brief. We want to acknowledge last week was School Counselors Week. On behalf of the Board of Education, thank you to all of our school counselors for the guidance, support, and care that you provide our students. We would also like to recognize that this month is Black History Month. We look forward to seeing how our schools honor and celebrate. Lastly, we'd like to wish everyone a fun winter break, and maybe when we return, some of the snow will have melted, though I doubt it. And temperatures will have nudged us a bit closer to spring. And with that, I would like to ask the superintendent to give his report.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Before we turn to the important work on our agenda this evening, I just want to take a moment to highlight a few examples of excellent work happening across the district. I'll begin with academics. This past weekend, the Schreiber High School Science Olympiad teams competed in the regional tournament and once again delivered outstanding results. They placed 4th out of 41 teams and earned 2 medals across 23 events and qualified for the state tournament for the 5th consecutive year. So I want to congratulate congratulate our students and the commitment of the teachers who support them in achieving this level of success. In addition, 2 of our science teachers, Chris Dardinsky and Nicole Lapinto, were honored by the Harvard Club of Long Island for excellence in teaching. Nicole Lapinto was named a Distinguished Teacher for 2026, an honor awarded to only 8 educators across Long Island. I had the opportunity to congratulate both of them today, and I want to wish them the best again in public here tonight. In the arts, it's important to note that out of 3,700 entries from across New York State, several students from Dr. Haeckel's Foundations and Studio Art class at Weber Middle School were recognized as winners in this year's Youth Art Month Design Contest themed The World Needs Art. Congratulations to Dr. Haeckel and her students for this remarkable accomplishment. Turning to tonight's agenda, tonight you'll hear 2 presentations. The first is an update on our climate survey in which students, families, and our staff provided feedback on a range of topics including school climate, school safety, and professional learning. Participants also responded to open-ended questions which helped surface priorities across stakeholder groups. Dr. Feeney will walk the board through the results and discuss their implications. The second presentation continues our budget discussions. Ms. Manuel has completed the tax cap calculation, and together we've analyzed the implications of a rollover budget. This work helps frame our preliminary budget discussion, which is scheduled for March 10th. As part of tonight's budget discussion, we will also review state aid and the proposed changes to the universal pre-kindergarten grant. The governor's proposed budget includes a 1% increase in foundation aid, as well as significant expansion of UPK funding for 4-year-olds. We are continuing to analyze the implications of both proposals for Port Washington as we develop the budget. Ms. Manuel and I will address both items in greater detail during the budget presentation. But at this point...
Before you turn it over, I'm going to interrupt you. I'm
Sure.
sorry. Ms. Epstein just reminded me that I did forget to ask you to address one topic here, which I hate to put you on the spot, but we had discussed at a previous board meeting that the Board of Ed was going to do some lobbying efforts as it related to federal monies. Can you just give a quick update?
Sure.
Maybe that and those advocacy efforts.
Sure, yes.
Yeah.
So there was a discussion at the last board meeting about a proposal in the House bill, which was which had a significant reduction in title grants given to the district. Specifically, Title II and Title III was slated in the House proposal to be eliminated, and Title I was slated for a significant reduction. If you'll recall that the Senate, in their version of the bill, did not have those significant reductions. We're pleased to report that the final bill that was approved by the legislature does not have those reductions, so those lobbying efforts are not necessary at this time.
Now, you can go on with your superintendent's thing. Apologies for putting you on the spot there.
Of course. So let me turn to the assistant superintendent's update, starting with our deputy superintendent, Dr. Shields.
Yes, good evening. We had an enrollment report calculated on February 4th. At that time, we had 5,089 students in grades kindergarten through 12th grade. That compares to 5,273 students this time last year. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Shields. I'd like to now ask Dr. Feeney to give some updates regarding the work of our joint committees, particularly the Reading Committee and the RTI Committee.
Sorry about that. We've had some updates throughout the year on the PGCD Reading Subcommittee, so this is a continuation of that process. So after reviewing 7 reading programs, the committee's narrowed selection down to 4 programs for consideration. The committee will be meeting with the vendors of these programs in March. And after reviewing these vendor presentations, as well as the data from the rubrics provided by the committee members, the committee will select 2 of these programs to pilot next year. The committee will aim to have pilots for most every grade level in each of the 5 elementary schools. As for the PGCD RTI subcommittee, been working in January of 2025. We did have an updated RTI document that was approved, posted on our website. They've been working on revisions to that document since January of 2025. On Thursday this week, the committee will be reviewing language related to AIS and ENL students. This is language that was developed during a joint meeting of all of the elementary reading and ENL teachers. It was a huge meeting, very productive. So the subcommittee hopes to have an updated version of the RTI plan to the full PGCD committee by the end of this month. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Feeney, and I want to thank the committee members for their diligent work in advancing these 2 district priorities. Next, I'd like to turn to our ex officio student board member, Caitlin, to give her report.
Good evening. After meeting with Dr. Posse, Dr. Shields, and Dr. Baer, I have drafted the grading policy survey with Dr. Baer's help. Specifically, we are looking to see whether the board's policy statements adequately addresses the student concerns I shared at the meeting when the new grading policy was discussed, about the changes to the Regents grading, the changes to the course weighting system, and the changes to the quarter weighting system. The goal of the survey would be to understand whether students feel that these new policy statements effectively addresses their concerns and how they feel about the grading policy now. This feedback will help guide any next steps moving forward. Next, I would like to raise 2 topics for discussion with the board. The first is an issue I've brought up before, but previously in the form of a statement. I would now like to raise it in more of a discussion-based way to hear the board's thoughts and feedback. Students at Schreiber have continued to raise concerns about cafeteria seating, particularly on rainy or cold days when outdoor seating is not a realistic option. With the way tables are currently organized, it can be difficult for groups of friends to find seats together, even when there are individual open seats throughout the cafeteria. I understand that expanding the physical size of the cafeteria is not a realistic request. However, I wanted to ask whether there might be any possibilities for investing in additional seating or in tables where the seats are not attached, along with extra chairs that could be moved as needed. The second topic I would like to discuss is the election of the next ex officio student member. As we move further into the school year, Dr. Baer and I have started discussing the timeline of this process. Last year, the senior class was not allowed to vote in the election, and I wanted to ask whether it would be possible to change that this year. I understand that seniors will not be in school next year. However, seniors have the most experience in high school and are very familiar with the junior class, arguably more so than the freshman class, and possibly even the sophomores. I believe that senior input could be valuable in selecting the next student representative, and I wanted to ask whether allowing seniors to vote this year is something the board would consider. So again, I'm asking for the board to respond to these two questions: whether additional seating for the cafeteria can be looked into, and if seniors can vote in the next ex officio student members election.
Thank you, Ms. Costello. And I appreciate you posing questions to the board. I think that'll really adds to the value of having the student ex officio member here. So thank you for doing that. Regarding the cafeteria seating, and if any board member disagrees, feel free to chime in. Typically, the board would respond to an ask from building administration, but for that, it's not something that the board would typically drive. But I think that where you add value is to the extent that that's something that the building did ask for in the budget, for example, or could reconfigure, that your advocacy to the board to support that. I would ask Dr. Posse, or maybe put Dr. Bear on the spot to understand if that's something that is being thought about, or if it's something that, how we would address, how we could ask the administration to address that, because I don't think that it's really falls under the board's purview. Yeah.
Yeah, agreed. I think that, and thank you again for raising it. I think the next step would be a conversation with Dr. Bear, and then Dr. Bear can bring it forward as part of the budget proposals. We're in the middle of the budget process now, so we can discuss it then as part of the process if she feels that that's a request that should be brought forward. So I would encourage you to have the next conversation with Dr. Bear. But thank you so much for raising it.
Sure, and if I could add to that, the cafeteria fund, we do have a fund balance, and we have a 3 to 5 year plan for all of the buildings. So we did start with the high school. We had new furniture there. We've also been looking at the elementary schools because there's quite a few elementary schools that the tables needed to be replaced. So I will bring that up to our assistant business manager to look at that. So it is something, it's good to have the feedback. So thank you.
I just have a question process-wise. When you are looking at facilities, is seating is obviously considered just based on capacity of, the schedule, right? Uniquely, I was at Weber and multiple times last week and saw how much snow is outside, and I never thought of what happens on snow days at a place like Weber. So obviously something similar with, Schreiber, that you can't sit outside on a rain day, and even if it's not raining, there's snow everywhere. So is that something that's considered when you are, with Mr. Graham, just looking at space with the principals, that it's just a capacity issue with seating due to just not rain days, but snow?
Yes, so that is. Also, alternative places that students could go besides the cafeteria are things that we look for also.
Thank you.
And regarding the second question, is it on the seating? Okay. I was actually going to say I'm about to defer to Ms. Brooks for policy, but I don't recall that was something that the board had set. I recall that was something that the building had set. So I'd be curious, did the board set that?
I don't remember exactly who decided that the seniors should not be included, but it's in the policy that the seniors are not included. So it says, and I'm reading from policy, what's this number? 2245, and under election appointment section, it says the ex officio student board member will be duly elected by the Schreiber High School student body of current 9th, 10th, and 11th grade students.
Yeah.
So so it's written in policy. It doesn't mean the policy can't change,
Right.
but as a legal procedural issue, I think it would be inappropriate to allow 12th graders to participate without a change to the policy.
Well, I think she's asking like what the process would be to ask the question.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's no reason that we couldn't, if that's what the policy says. But am I wrong? I remember a conversation, I thought it was building driven, that the students would be voting for somebody who wouldn't be representing them next year. So I'm curious, Caitlin, I hear what you're saying, but I guess I'm going to pose the question back to you as to why the board had chose it. And I don't want to put you on the spot, you don't have to answer now, is how would you respond to that, that the 12th grade students won't be represented by next year's officio, who they'd be voting for?
Right, so that's what I was kind of getting at, where a lot of the seniors, they know these junior candidates more than like per se the freshman class, and the freshman class are the ones voting for them. So even though like the freshmen are going to be represented by them next year, it's not like the seniors are going to try to sabotage the rest of the school. They're going to have their best interests at heart too. So they know the candidates better, and they have more experience in high school. I think their input is valuable. I don't think the fact that even though they're not going to be at school next year, it's still valuable to hear what they have, like what they think as well, I think.
I just have a question. I do believe we did discuss it, and it was a full board meeting discussion, not just a policy, where there was several items proposed to us, and the board agreed on that. That it wasn't that it was just listed, and we're like, oh, it's listed. The only question I have is, again, I mix up what this district does. We have a student body government and a president. And who votes on the president? It's for that current year. Yeah.
Yeah, so we do have a student council. We have an election process for the executive council, and technically we don't really call it a president, but we have someone to sign off as the president. So basically it's like the executive council, like 6 students usually who get elected by the general student council, and then the executive board, they just have like a president, even though it's not like an actual president.
Yeah, that was the other thing last year, is that I deferred a lot of some of our questions that we were looking at based on what that group already did, but that doesn't really help with this. So I will have to think about that.
Go ahead, Ms. Epstein. I think you want to talk about process, how we might approach it.
Yeah, we could amend it here. That is a true statement. Personally, I think, of course, when we made this policy as a full board and we're discussing it, we didn't really know, right, what was going to happen. And I think you do bring up a very valid and valuable point about the senior class knowing the junior class that's being elected as well, possibly better than the 9th grade class. So I would propose that we go to make the amendment. If everyone else on the board agrees, and if we want to do it expeditiously, as Ms. Brooks said, we could just do it right here. We don't have to have a first and second read and a big discussion about it, and the change can be implemented if the board would like to do that.
I will say, I'm processing the feedback. I personally am not convinced necessarily. I think I still have a problem with the representation piece of it. Like, you're voting, you're not going to be there next year. So I have a concern with changing it personally. So I would not at this today be ready to vote for it, but I'm only one of 7. Yeah.
We're not allowing the 8th graders to vote, right? Well, that was a discussion last year. I mean, the 8th graders are going to be there next year, and we don't allow them to be represented. So I think it goes both ways on that discussion, but the only thing I can think of is serving the students. What do the students want? You know, like the full student body, not just the senior class, if that's what they're looking for as a full group collectively, you know, but that could be.
Yeah, I mean, if we're looking at the logic of this, Ms. Costello doesn't only represent the students of Schreiber High School, she represents the students of the Port Washington School District pre-K to 12. And we don't allow our pre-K through grade 8 students to vote in this election. We could, maybe we should, that's a conversation worth having. But if the question is simply one of representation, I think the logic is inconsistent. So I take Ms. Costello's feedback to heart. I think we should have a more robust discussion about that.
So can we squeeze it onto the policy agenda? In the interim, I can reach out to NISBA and see if they have any type of recommendation as well. Is that
Sure.
And then we could always fast track it after a policy meeting, which is at the end of February, and just adopt it if that's what we choose
Perfect.
to do, so that by March it's ready to go. I think the election will be in May or so. We have a little bit
Is
of
it
time.
also worth looking at what our kind of like regional best practices, what the policies look like in our neighboring districts?
If someone wants to do that work.
We can,
Yeah.
I can ask it in NISBA if you'd like me to. Napo Suffolk. Thank you.
Dr. Shields will find a way to squeeze another couple minutes into the meeting. Okay, we can
Okay.
we can do that.
Thank you very much, Ms. Costello, for those two pertinent topics. Okay. I didn't see anybody signed in for community comments. Is there anybody who's wishing? You can go ahead and step to the podium. Since you're not signed in, if you don't mind just saying your name and signing in when you're done speaking. Just a reminder, we allow community members to speak for up to 3 minutes. Please keep your comments as brief as possible and related to school matters. Inappropriate conduct such as personal attacks will not be permitted. Thank you. Yeah, you could, if you could just state your name anyway, we'd appreciate it.
Is that it? Okay. Yeah, so I'm Julie Nussbaum. I have 2 kids at Daly in kindergarten and 2nd grade. And I wanted to speak about literacy in the elementary school. I think it's a really important topic, and it's almost so obvious that young children reading is important that it's easy to overlook. I think that there's sometimes more exciting topics to discuss, like STEM or AP classes, enrichment, etc. But I'll just share my personal experience, which is that when we moved here 5 years ago, I just assumed, like, we're in a good school district. I send my kids to school, they come home, and they've learned all the things they need to learn. And I've realized over the course of the last year or two that there's a lot of nuances to the education that kids get in a, quote, good school system. And I was really, really shocked to find out that we really didn't have a universal science of reading curriculum. Like Dr. Feeney and Dr. Passy have talked about over the last several months, there's this patchwork of materials, and it really isn't consistent with what we know now to be really best practices. And I appreciate all of the work that Dr. Feeney and Dr. Passy and the board are doing to affect that change. I wanted to know what the district can do now to improve the fidelity of the teaching of the science of reading rather than waiting the 2 years or so until a new curriculum comes out. We talk a lot about being data-driven, and I think this whole auditorium could be filled up with data about the importance of learning to read early and well, and that being behind in kindergarten makes you more behind in 1st grade. So this question of waiting 2 years, if your kid's in kindergarten now, they're potentially not getting like high fidelity teaching and reading until 2nd grade. And I just quickly want to reference, it was Dr. Feeney's presentation at the curriculum meeting in December, where he showed a slide of like within the same school, same grade, 4 different teachers, and it looked at the percentage of kids in each class that reached the targeted, like it was something like the targeted amount of improvement in textual reading. You know, and there's one teacher who only 5% of students reach that. There's another teacher for whom 27% of students reach that. So it's essentially a lottery whether your kid is potentially in a class where, you know, people would be pretty shocked in a good school system for somebody to be in a class where only 5% of the students are meeting this mark. And I realize that that has been recognized. And I just really want to encourage the board to, I would say, be generous with funding support for improving early childhood reading. I think as a Board of Education, there's really no more important task you have than to make sure you're producing good readers. And when you talk in the higher grades about, you know, some kids being much further along in reading and the teachers
30 more seconds.
Okay, I just think it all starts early, and I hope that there's support for the literacy instructional coaches and that we don't kind of watch our cents and dimes with kids reading. Thanks.
Thank you. Are there any further speakers? Okay. No, we're gonna close community comments. I see that Dr. Posse does want to just make a statement.
Yeah, I just want to make one statement. The work we're doing with respect to literacy is the work that any good school district does. Take a real comprehensive look at our program and the work that is happening. One thing that you should know is that we really do have faith in our teachers. I have had the privilege of being in a number of classrooms throughout the district. I've made it a goal of mine to go visit classrooms throughout the district so that I can get to know the schools and the buildings. And I have to tell you that our teachers are really doing an excellent job in terms of their teaching. What we're referring to is the cohesion of the program. So in other words, what's happening now is that you have really good practices in one classroom, you have really good practices in another classroom, but you don't necessarily have a cohesive program. Once we have a cohesive program with a consistent methodology, then what we'll see improvement in all those areas. But to answer your question and anyone else that has this concern as well, I do want to also just highlight the fact that we are investing in professional learning and leveraging the expertise that exists within our staff. So we are not simply waiting for a program to be enacted. We are taking some very proactive steps to make sure that we're providing specific professional learning on best practices, and again, leveraging the talent that exists within our school district. We have some very talented teachers doing some wonderful work. Our job is to extend that work and make sure we're delivering the best possible educational program. We take that very, very seriously. So I just wanted to make that comment.
Thank you very much, Dr. Posse. At this time, we're going to move on to our discussion items. I just want to note one thing. Is I was informed by Ms. Epstein that we are aware, the district clerk is aware that there are some issues with board docs, and some community members may not be able to see all of the attachments. Board docs is actively working on that. It's a technical issue, so if somebody was looking for attachments that they can't see on this agenda, please check back, or you can email the district clerk on our new district clerk website on the board site, and they'll get you those documents. So with that, we do have two presentations this evening. I apologize that we're not starting them until 9 p.m., but such is life, I guess. So with that, I'll ask Dr. Feeney to please start with the climate survey presentation.
Thank you for this opportunity to present the results of our climate survey. This is the 5th year we have done the climate survey. This presentation summarizes the feedback from students, from families, from staff throughout the district, and our goal is to share what we heard, look for any patterns, and to use the data from these surveys to help inform our district priorities as well as our next steps. A couple notes on the survey. Surveys, we use Thought Exchange platform again for the 2nd year in a row, which allowed certainly the quantitative results analysis as well as a deeper analysis of the open-ended questions. To reduce survey fatigue, we did shorten the surveys, focus the open-ended questions a little more, removing some categories. So even with fewer questions, the combination of the scaled items as well as the open responses did provide us a nice picture of some of the strengths as well as areas of growth. District overview. These are the topics. The slide shows who was surveyed, what was asked, the response rates, sort of the common themes across the different modules. Student participation, as you can see, it remained very strong. Staff participation was solid, although a little lower at the secondary level. The family participation continues to be the most challenging for us to reach those families, and we're going to continue to work on improving those response rates, which are highlighted here. Once again, the response rates do fluctuate year to year, especially among families and staff. Student response rates have remained consistently high. So that fluctuation we want to keep in mind as we're interpreting the year-to-year changes as well. Student responses, different categories. You see the reduction of another category this year, so focusing in on 4 code categories as we go through these slides. Once again, are available. You're looking at some overall trends rather than single data points. We've got some modest declines in areas such as school climate, belonging, and school safety compared to prior years. But overall, even with those modest declines, the results are in general positive and aligned with what we're seeing anecdotally in the schools. Staff teacher responses, seeing some fluctuations, some decreases, some increases overall. And our family responses. Once again, this is the group that had the lowest response rate. So just trying to put this in context, those are the numbers based on certainly the responses to the multiple choice. I think the analysis, I think a lot of the power comes in play with the open-ended questions. These are the open-ended questions we ask for students, for the employees, as well as the families. These open-ended questions are certainly a critical part of the survey. They're going to give us context to the ratings, help explain what we're seeing, what respondents meant, as they selected either lower or higher scores. So the themes that emerge here do inform the priority areas that follow. I'm going to do one slide with sort of this overview. And some of the areas of success, these are quoted from responses. Whenever I do these presentations, and this is a perfect moment to remind, we see results. We cannot tie these results to an individual person, be it a student, a family member, or a staff member. So that's really important. So later we go through, look at some of the comments that were made, and just sort of a little grid of some of the areas of success we have. We've got consistent strengths across groups, students, families, staff. They frequently reference the positive relationships, the caring teachers, responsive leadership, and a strong sense of belonging. So, these results reinforce the important role that relationships play in our schools as well as our district. Looking at some key priorities by group, some of the common themes that came out of each of the groups. Students 4 through 5 had a slightly different survey than students in grades 6 through 8, our elementary and our secondary. I want to point out in the past, we used to survey students in grades 3 through 5. We cut that back last year based on some feedback from our teachers to really focus in on 4 and 5. So just summarizing what these different groups have identified as what's most important right now. The students, they emphasize time, they sort of emphasize workload, facilities, and supervision. Both 3 through 5, 3, 4, as well as 4 through 5, as well as the 6 through 12 students. Families, we're looking, they focus on communication, guidance supports, access to programs being important. Our teachers and staff highlighted staffing, coverage, professional learning, and some operational supports. So while the specifics might differ, there are some themes that overlap across the groups. So taking the comments and organizing them and looking at them and comparing to our district priority area, this is where we start saying, okay, so what do we do with all this information? We have our priority areas. What we heard within each of these individual priority areas, and what opportunities we have. So, you know, the feedback suggests that students are looking for their learning to feel both purposeful as well as manageable, which would include things like clear expectations, reduced busy work, and more engaging and applied learning experiences. Looking for consistency across classes and schools. That was a recurring theme. So, you know, for us, some of the opportunities in this area, you know, would include providing common guidance on homework load and assessment timelines, you know, expanding flexible study, enrichment blocks perhaps, encouraging project-based, collaborative, and future-ready learning units. That's an example of how we can take some of the feedback from the survey and focus in on our priority areas. Our second priority area, professional learning for faculty and staff. Some of what we heard in terms of a lot of comments about the role that professional development plays, how it's delivered, you know, some requests to make it sort of more on demand, on time. The staff talked about valuing the collaboration and the learning. They certainly want the learning and that professional development to both be practical as well as sustained. A very clear preference for job-embedded professional learning, coaching, and follow-up rather than isolated sessions. The technology and the AI training tied directly to daily work emerged as a need. Should point out that part of our plan is to, you know, provide some of this on-demand PD through the work of our instructional coaches that we're looking to bring on board. Our third priority area, culture of care, belonging, and well-being. Students, respondents appreciated greatly the caring adults. Want to make sure but they did express some concerns about some inconsistencies in terms of the expectations, sometimes the supervision as well. There's some references on the student part to some stress, transitions, lunch and recess time, as well as behavior enforcement, which for us reinforces the importance of consistent practices, restorative approaches, and you know, sufficient supervision in all of those areas. Our fourth priority area, partnerships that empower. Families appreciate district communication tools, but feel at times overwhelmed by the volume of the communication. So there is a desire for clearer, more timely information, particularly around academic planning and counseling. Families also expressed interest in more accessible and inclusive engagement opportunities. You know, so for us, we've got some opportunities for flexible, multilingual family workshops, the evening, virtual, involving parents and students, and planning inclusive cultural and extracurricular events, and you know, really looking and reviewing our communication channels. So our communication's concise, and we have maybe some sort of customizable parental preferences that they can choose. The fifth priority area, efficient operations, future-ready facilities. These sort of issues came through in our open-ended responses, the facilities, technology, at times staffing levels that affect daily experiences for students and staff. And these concerns are aligned with our ongoing capital planning work, the staffing conversations that we've had, and some of what we're looking to put in place. Just a few final notes. This desire, you get several themes that cut across all the data points. This desire for consistency, for clarity, having predictable systems, the time pressures that impact both learning and well-being, for our students as well as the staff, the importance of resources, and the theme that where our relationships are strong, that's where experiences, both our students, staff, as well as families, are more positive. Overall, the findings will help us affirm our current district priorities and identify needs for continued focus. So, we get the data, we get the survey. There's always there's a nervousness around getting the results, right? Once we put these out, people say, do we have the results? Can we look at them? Can we review them? The purpose of the report, of course, is to inform our reflection and planning. We're not looking to assign blame, point fingers. This is a district-wide survey. These are district-wide issues. So we use these data points alongside our other district measures so we can guide our decisions for what we look for in terms of continuous improvement as we move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Feeney. So before I open to board questions, which I'm sure there will be, there was a lot in here, and I'm sure that trustees can, there's 7 of us and everybody can probably ask 20 questions about every single line item. Before we totally open up to that, I want to see if there's a way we can avoid some of that by maybe asking you broadly if you can kind of tell us how we as trustees should be looking at this and how you're going to use it, and maybe that will broadly answer some of people's questions before we dig into that.
So a couple things, and I see Ms. Melkonian's raising her hand. So this was my Reader's Digest version. We've got a more in-depth version that will allow for extensive Q&A that will be presented on Friday at our curriculum committee meeting. That presentation, which is far more detailed, will be posted. This presentation will be posted as well. I think in terms of framing this, the way I would want a board member to look at it is the way I tried to frame it, aligned with our district priorities, where what we've heard based on, especially in those open-ended questions regarding the comments. If the open-ended questions weren't required to be completed, if a respondent is completing an open-ended question, I think that you look at it, you analyze it, and fitting those in and explaining what we heard, which is how I try to set it up in those 5 priority areas, and what opportunities those comments present. That's how I would look at it as a board member.
Okay. Did you want to say something, Ms. McClellan, before I go ahead? Oh, okay. Who has questions? And I'll set in order. Okay. So let's start with Ms. McClellan since I already called up, and then we'll go Ms. Alvarez, then we'll hit this end. We always start at the end. I'm starting in the middle this time. Mix it up.
Okay. Wow, this is exciting stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. First of all, thank you, and I look forward to a deeper discussion on Friday with this. First of all, I really appreciate that, unless I'm forgetting, I don't remember it being organized around priorities, and I think that's making it helpful for me to think of it in terms of how these responses actually drive, God bless you, changes or improvements in the district for our staff, our students, our families. So I really appreciate that way that it's been organized. Asking mathematician Dr. Feeney, What is considered valid and reliable in terms of response rate?
So it's funny, when Dr. Pasi and I were talking about these response rates, whereas I am looking at it from 5 years and we see a decline in the response rate, he looked at the original and says, wow, those are great response rates. And they really are. You know, you get over 20% of people responding to a survey in February. That's pretty good. I mean, that's quite good. It's, you know, clearly we're still low for the families, but the families, you know, it's a different layer. But for the students, that's incredible response, captive audience, understood. But even the staff members, although it's lower than it's been in the past, it's still a very strong response rate. We do need to work on reaching out to the families.
Okay. So so you're saying 20 is what we should hope for?
Yeah, you get over that, you've got, that's a great response rate.
And that's considered reliable data at that point?
So whether you get 15%, the more data, the better, of course. The questions are framed within the different areas as, you know, valid and reliable. But yeah, the more number of responses you can get, the better for your results.
Okay, now I just have a very goofy question, which is, are fresh restrooms new? What does fresh mean? Do we know?
Maybe better smelling.
Oh, okay. I know that's silly, but it just
But we do
stuck in
have
my
some
head.
new, the Manor Haven's got new restrooms, and those have been well received.
Okay.
Those were redone.
Thank you. Those were my questions.
Ms. Alvarez.
Thank you. For priority number 3, culture of care, belonging, and well-being, you know, some of the common themes as far as rules and punitive approaches, that sounds very code of conduct. So I just have a question as far as the code of, I guess it's 2 questions. I don't know where we're at with code of conduct. One would be, is there a current committee for code of conduct? CCCC, Code of Culture Care. I didn't mean to say code of conduct, sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. You just call it the code.
All the Cs. There is a current committee, yes? Or
We've
no?
had 2
Yeah.
meetings, yes.
Okay.
And we're
So-
reviewing.
So just a question, would the committee then be reviewing this data as far as just moving forward with whatever you are reviewing?
Yeah, the committee will be reviewing this data as well as some other data at the next meeting.
And then the question would be for the board, when we review the CCCCC in the summer, I forget which meeting it is, but we do the hearing, right? Do we find that this more detailed information be available to us when we are reviewing all the information in the summer for our CCCC?
It goes to policy first, and they'll do that deep dive and hear from the committee from the code, and then that's where that in-depth part will be, and then it will be brought to the board, and we'll have the hearing, and we can discuss it at that point.
Okay. Thank you. I am on curriculum, so that was just my full board question. My other questions, I can save for the deep dive on Friday.
Thank you, Ms. Alvarez. I know Ms. Gilliard is going to save hers for Friday. Ms. Brooks.
Thank you for continuing to do this for the district. The policy person in me is wondering why we have 4th and 5th graders saying they need much less homework. And I'm just wondering if that's because any amount of homework is too much for a 4th or 5th grader because they want to do other things, or is there actually a policy violation? Do we know? Because the policy is very clear that homework should not interfere with work after school, family obligations. I pulled it up, I don't know what the exact language is, but should not take so much of a child's time. They are denied opportunities to engage in other activities of their own choosing, etc. And for a 4th and 5th grader, the time frame is 40 to 60 minutes, and it's guidelines. But I'm wondering, do we know, because we've not really had the opportunity to review how the homework policy is being implemented. Do we know why these children are saying a lot less homework? Is because they just don't want it, or is it much more than what our policy is saying?
The, one of the questions on the survey does speak to the number of hours of homework. So we could do an analysis and, possibly some sort of cross-tabulation with the number of hours, as well as if we can pull up the comments for whoever selected within those number of hours. We can't, once again, pick up the student, but, we can see the response that had, I'm given 10 hours of homework every day, and see if they made those sort of comments.
That's if the rest of the board wants it, but.
I mean, I think it's worth asking. I will tell you anecdotally, as someone who had kids that age, and currently I've never had a kid have more than 40 to 60 minutes of homework, even one day. I don't know if others, so I think it's okay, but I defer to others. I have a feeling that just kids saying they don't want homework, broadly homework, but I have not heard one other parent in all my travels saying there's too much homework in those grades.
Can I just say that we have data in front of us that is suggesting otherwise, that there are students. So for me, what Ms. Brooks is proposing, and then what Dr. Feeney is suggesting that it can be looked at, is I'm okay with that. I'm all for reviewing the data that we have in front of us, and looking at a deep dive. And one of the things I was going to say it Friday, but with the response rate, I think, and I've spoken to Dr. Feeney about the surveys, and I know you take them very serious and that you are working on it a lot, and I'm working on doing a survey. But the more that we are responsive to it, the more the numbers will grow, right? More immediate that we are responsive, regardless of the numbers of, if it was 2 students or 2 families. I do think it's important to do as much of a deep dive in these surveys as possible.
Or just regarding the comment on homework, is it possible that at Friday's meeting, there's a deeper dive into this conversation, and that maybe it can just be a recommendation that policy look into it more based on whatever comes out of that deeper dive? Because I don't know that I have enough data here. I don't know if anyone else has enough data to conclusively say.
Same.
Yeah. I know that we have a long list of policy ideas, and for many, many years, an update on fidelity to the homework policy has been on every year, and we've not gotten to it.
So true. And not for lack of trying.
No.
But this is why I asked the question. Because I can't imagine that an outlier, this comment, and the fact that on slide 17, that under a priority area is provide common guidance on homework load.
Okay. So I think,
it dovetails from.
again, I'm skeptical, but I'm not, it sounds like everyone is okay with. So Dr. Feeney, do you feel that this is something you can get a little more color into somehow?
By Friday, I will do my best.
Okay.
Policy doesn't need it by Friday. Okay, and then
Appreciate that.
my final question, my only other question was, on slide 15, one of the key priorities in terms of the teachers was fewer pullouts. And I was under the impression from past conversations and presentations that that fewer pullouts were supposed to be happening.
Yep.
And that more push-ins were
Correct.
happening.
Yep.
So is this fewer pullouts, is it not happening? Is it not happening fast enough?
I would argue fewer pullouts. Yes, there are definitely fewer pullouts. That's absolutely happening. I think making that a more consistent practice in multiple areas is sort of what's being communicated.
Okay, thank you.
Just to clarify, when the feedback from the teachers on fewer pullouts, is it specifically just literally students being pulled out for services, or they themselves being pulled out for something else?
No, what's meant by that is the students being pulled out.
Okay.
Am I remembering correctly that we are approving some consulting work in terms of elementary scheduling that is around the subject of
Correct.
having protected instructional time?
Yes.
So that's part of the focus that you'll be spending time on.
That's an excellent point. In today's agenda, right, there is we've got a consultant that's going to be working with our elementary school scheduling teams to, for best practices and develop schedules with protected time, fewer fallouts.
Ms. Maloney?
Thank you, and thank you as always for doing this work and doing this deep dive. I know it can sometimes be hard to look in this mirror because you never know what you're going to see, and I really appreciate it, so thank you. I have a couple of questions. My first one is pretty straightforward. When you are reviewing this with the administration, what is the threshold you use for statistical significance with the scaled responses? So when we're looking at this, is any movement in the green great, and any movement in the red something to be taken very seriously, or is there a threshold that we should be considering?
So, right, they're numbers, snapshots in time. You don't want to panic too much when you're seeing, a couple points here and there one way or the other. You don't want to beat yourself up too much. You don't want to, pat yourself on the back too much. You're looking for those significant changes, and you're looking for the, change over time. So, for us, we had, by and large, from year to year, you had not significant drops or changes. You had relative stability. I'd worry just looking at student responses when we start. They all went down, but when you're going down by 8 points, 8 percentage points, 7 percentage points, you'd want to inquire and try to dig a little deeper there. I would not worry one way or the other about 1, 2, 3 points.
Thank you. I took the survey. I didn't screenshot it, so I don't have the prompts in front of me, but I was wondering how the survey defined or prompted around the term school climate, particularly in the context of the quantitative scale inquiry. Was it left open to interpretation? Was it defined in the questioning? Looking at the data there, it was notable the difference between the teacher and staff rating and the student and family ratings. A significant drop in the teacher and staff ratings on school climate, but relatively stable ratings in the student and family categories. I'm struggling to think about how to interpret that. So if that's not something you have on you right now, appreciate that, and maybe it's just something that you could share with the board. Yeah. Maybe just a copy of the full survey so we can see what questions were asked and how they were asked.
Right. So no, I know every question that was tied to those broad topics. I can do that as part of the deeper dive, just listening here are the topics, here are the questions, not to belabor it, but just quickly so even the public can see.
Yeah, I think that would be helpful. Thank you. And finally, there is so much in here, even within each priority area. So I'm wondering, in the areas where we're seeing the greatest decreases in, let's call it positive feelings, we look at teacher-student relationships and the student responses, for example, or the greatest tension between the quantitative rating and the qualitative feedback. So for instance, in the teacher responses, the scaled rating on resources was pretty stable, but there were some real issues that came out in the qualitative responses. So I'm wondering, in those qualitative responses, in those particular areas, and again, you may not have the answer to this right now, and I understand that, and maybe this is something that will be discussed on Friday, but are there any specific issues that come up qualitatively that crop up year after year in the qualitative responses? And in terms of how we prioritize as a board, should we be looking more closely at those kind of very persistent sources of discontent?
Certainly we'd want to know sources of discontent. We want to address them. I think some of that was mentioned. I think the hard press, in my experience and what we've seen in the survey, bathrooms, something as simple as bathrooms, make a huge impact. And you know, we can't redo all of our bathrooms all at once. And I think I mentioned a couple months ago, Manor Haven got 2 of them. Fantastic. They still have others to go. But students often mention things like bathrooms. You hear cafeteria, you hear cafeteria food. We do a lot of work on all of those. And actually, food wasn't mentioned as much in this one as we've seen in the past, because I know Ms. Manuel in her office spent a lot of time talking to kids, trying to get a sense of where it matters. So ongoing things, I think, from a staff point of view, which always, you know, sort of, you know, impacts me, is, you know, we need professional development, professional learning that means something, that's impactful. And, you know, I know just myself as well as the entire committee, PGCD Staff Development Subcommittee, we spend a lot of time surveying staff and reaching out, what do you want, spending time, bringing people in, and setting up days that are meaningful. But you also see this need for sustained professional development. We've done that with outside vendors in response to that to help support our math program, and we're looking to do that internally with our instructional coaches. So when we do have persistent areas, I think we've addressed them. We've seen some movement or some sort of elimination of those comments and some of the feedback. But we continue to look and press those issues.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I look forward to, I'm sure, I know how hard this administration works and how seriously it takes this kind of feedback. So I'm sure we will see it reflected in the upcoming budget development, and I look forward to that. Final question is, has there been any thinking around incentivizing family and potentially even staff participation in the survey?
There have been some suggestions. I know some of the members, some HSA presidents have, you know, can we buy a pizza party, most response rate, whatever. Yeah, I haven't put out any incentive myself, but it's never hurts.
Okay, maybe that's an area for partnership, so thank you.
Thank you. I was actually not going to ask any questions, but I'm going to dovetail off of one of your questions, Ms. Malani. So Jessica's question about patterns that we've seen over and over again, one did come to mind for me, which is, I feel like every year we've done this survey, which I think has been since you've been here.
Yes.
And maybe even we started it right before you came. We keep seeing this issue about supervision in the middle school and the high school, particularly with the hallways and the bathroom and the bullying, vaping. Why does that keep coming up? Like, what's lacking there that now, like, I guess 5 years into doing this survey, that we keep seeing that one?
Listen, I think these are both large buildings, the middle school as well as the high school, lots of areas, lots of spaces. I think at the middle school, part of it is about the age. I think the, you know, Ms. Javelin and her team and the teachers spend a lot of time trying to, you know, work on really positive themes, you know, not about don't do this, but, you know, be kind, you know, treat each other this way, and how that impacts the whole community, bringing in restorative practices. So we try to address it that way. Part of it is sometimes the age, and part of it is the broader culture we're in, which I think in many ways can be defined as a, in many areas, there's a lot of mean-spiritedness being modeled, you know, outside of school, and it's hard sometimes to shake students from that and, you know, prevent it from coming into our schools. But there are ongoing issues. I mean, there's not a middle school principal I know that does not have to continually work on addressing issues such as, you know, student behavior, you know, bullying, whatever you may well call it, and making sure that, you know, you've got these positive aspects in terms of how kids are treating each other. It's hardly unique to Port Washington. That's not an excuse, but that's the reality of of where we are. And I think Ms. Javelin and her team, they go to conferences, they come back with great ideas. They've implemented a lot of those. I think it is making a difference, and we will continue as a district to, address those issues.
Okay. Are there, just on that topic, because again, are there like kind of best practices that we should be looking at in terms of just how we're looking at the supervision, how we're allocating the resources? I'm sure like someone would tell us get more paras or whatever, but do we have protocols in place just to cover those hallways?
Bodies matter, but there are other best practices we can put in place that aren't about bringing in more people. And, I've spoken to Dr. Posse as well as some of my colleagues about, a conference I went to where, for 5 hours, I took about 14 pages worth of notes of really wonderful best practices, things that we can do that are not resource intensive, but are very directed and focused, and use existing staff, teachers, support staff that can make a huge difference in the school. So, and that's part of what we're going to be sharing with our administrative team moving forward.
Got it. Thank you.
Can I
Ms. Epstein, you're up. I know whenever I ask a question, you always have a follow-up, so you might as well.
Perfect.
Go ahead.
So you were ready.
I'll save the spot for you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Ms. Epstein, are you okay? It's specifically about this. Possibly, and I'm not, again, I don't need to, we're throwing a lot at you. I have the same thought as Mr. Smith, is just as far as best practice, I think really specifically for me is a similar sized school, both secondary buildings. Are we similarly staffed when it comes to personnel with these issues to other districts? I think that's really what I would be looking to know is with the paras, with security, are we fully staffed? And fully staffed is subjective based on what we've been doing so far. So I think it's just more of what I would look for is another district similar to us. Do they have more? Do their surveys show that these are not recurring themes for them? So that's just something I'd be more curious to see is what, I know you say that other districts use this survey. So do you get that information? Do you know what other districts' common themes are? And, the next step for me would be that kind of review.
What I will say is not every district does an annual survey, and not many other districts will share it the way we share it. We're very open in how we share it. Roses and thorns, the whole kit and caboodle. Not every district puts things out there like that.
Thank you. I'll just clarify.
Publicly.
As it relates to I think what she's asking is valid, but I would also look at, are we allocating the staff we have, and not just, is it a number of staff issue, but are we deploying the staff in a best practice way in terms of, I've heard other schools ask all the staff to stand in the doorways during the switching periods. I don't know if we're doing something like that.
Those are some of the best practices that I was referring to as well. So yes, not every best practice needs additional staffing.
Okay. Thank you. Ms. Epstein.
Thank you. Again, thank you for this. And I actually had pulled out the presentation from last year and compared it against this one. And I want to, again, I'll echo what Ms. Melkonian said. I appreciate that you're in alignment with what we're trying to do is align everything to our district priorities and our goals that we set out. So it was incredibly helpful.
Okay.
And from that, I kind of also want to dovetail on the conversation of patterns, because in doing that, you can then also see the patterns in some of the things that we talk about, homework, bullying, all of these things. And just a recommendation for a point of consideration, because also as I look through this and as we talk about best practices, I know that we've made enhancements that do address some of the issues that are coming up, right? And every year you make a small enhancement and then you have a small improvement. I think it would be helpful for us to understand as a board what components of enhancements, so not So of the opportunities and consideration for next year to show us what was done then for those opportunities of considerations is specifically surrounding those issues that seem to be recurring or the issues that seem to be decreasing for us over time, to try and show those enhancements. And again, I can be, if no one else agrees with me, then we don't have to do it that way. But I think it would be helpful for us to see that over time, because it does show that every year when we look at this as a snapshot, we say, okay, well, here we are, and this is what we heard, and this is what we consider, but we never receive that follow-up on what was really implemented, if anything. And so, for example, I'll even go to the district priority number 5. As being on the Budget and Facilities Committee, we are continuing to discuss that multi-year capital plan for instructional tech, HVAC, and cafeteria upgrades, and we'll make sure to keep that on our tickler as something that the board can do in alignment with the survey. In addition to that, we can also make sure that when we're talking about the lunch fund and our cafeteria changes and looking at all of our cafeteria facilities and that, we can make sure that we're looking at those opportunities of consideration, and that way, as a board, if resources, either staffing or financial, need to be considered, we can have that knowledge and be presented with it. And then furthermore, like updating of engineering computers. I know that we're in the term of negotiating a lease to update all of our computers, and we've been talking about that. The question being asked is, I hope that our engineering computers are being considered as part of that process and not just our desktop computers. What? And not just the one-to-ones, right? So, because when we talk about it, I think that we do consider it's our one-to-ones and our teacher stations, but we do offer other computer services within. And so again, it helps us as a board understand how and for the community to understand how our resources are being allocated based on the data and the opportunities and consideration that we have from there. So I'm making a commitment that at least in the priorities that I can work in as a board member, I will continue to bring those forward. So thank you for outlining them. And I hope we can all partner together to continue that so we know what we're doing.
Well, I think that's an excellent point. We've got to mention, hey, we do this every year. We're not ignoring it, and here's what we've done. And that's the loop that I have not made as part of these presentations. So next year, it's going to be a 40-slide presentation. You'll see.
Can't wait. Thank you, Dr. Feeney.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, Dr. Posse, do you want to take the floor here for the
Yes, thank you very much.
rollover budget presentation?
Thank you. So while we're getting the presentation up, tonight's presentation continues the budget development work that we began earlier this year. At our last meeting, we examined factors shaping the 26-27 budget and established the strategic lens that will guide our decisions. This evening, we focus on two foundational components of that work, the rollover budget and the tax cap. The rollover budget reflects the cost of maintaining current programs and services and establishes a baseline for decision-making. The tax cap defines the fiscal framework within which those commitments and priorities must be balanced, and together these elements help anchor the budget conversation. So as you know, the foundation of our budget rests on our instructional program, which we have been discussing all year. You'll note that each of the previous presentations is linked here and available on the district website. Through the lens of these presentations, you'll see that the budget development process has been a deliberate, iterative process that has been underway since the fall. Each step of the budget development process is focused on the district's vision for our students, grounded in the Portrait of a Graduate, which serves as our North Star. And at the start of the school year, we identified district priorities designed to translate our shared vision for students into action. You heard Dr. Feeney speak about those priorities earlier. Throughout the year, we've worked intentionally towards those priorities by strengthening foundational learning in the early years through intentional investments in new curriculum, building academic momentum in the middle years by exploring ways to expand opportunities for students to challenge advanced coursework, and expanding access and opportunities at the high school level through expanded course offerings. These priorities have developed through our review of student achievement data. They've guided our planning, our instructional focus, and they will inform the budget development process. The goal of our budget is to create a fiscally responsible spending plan that intentionally invests in student growth, opportunity, and long-term success, while remaining mindful of our responsibility to taxpayers. To help guide us through the budget process, we've articulated 6 goals for us to keep top of mind during the budget process. First, maintain class sizes that support strong student-teacher relationships. Second, strengthen and expand academic programs that challenge and engage learners. Third, invest in meaningful professional learning for faculty and staff. Fourth, improve and maintain our school facilities so that they are safe, modern, and ready for learning. 5, ensure students receive the right support at the right time. And 6, continue to use clear, consistent information to understand student learning and growth. The specific initiatives we're exploring to advance our goals are listed on this slide. Instructional coaching positions are teaching roles that play a critical role in the successful implementation of curriculum, providing sustained job-embedded support that builds instructional capacity and ensures district-wide coherence. We're also considering the creation of a director of mathematics position to provide district-wide leadership across the mathematics program from pre-K through grade 12. A curriculum expert in this leadership role is critical to ensuring our instructional materials, pacing, assessment, and instructional practices are aligned and coherent across grade levels. Without dedicated leadership, even strong curricula can be implemented inconsistently, limiting their impact. This role will provide clear instructional direction, support teachers and coaches, use data to monitor student progress, and ensure that our investment in mathematics instruction translates to improved outcomes for students over time. Together, these roles are intended to build internal capacity, support consistent implementation, and sustain strong instruction over time. The expansion of academic pathways reflects our commitment to access and opportunity. We're exploring new courses, including a humanities-focused advanced placement opportunity for 9th grade students, and courses aligned to student interests and emerging workforce trends. Professional learning remains a critical priority to ensure that instructional improvements are well supported and enduring. Finally, addressing needed building repairs through an increased transfer to capital reflects our responsibility to maintain safe and functional facilities. We're considering a $4.4 million transfer to capital to support 3 significant projects: flooring abatement at Guggenheim, the retaining wall at Manor Haven, and roof and masonry improvements at Daly. This is in addition to our regular maintenance plan. At our last meeting, the board asked about items that were considered or reallocated as part of last year's budget process. I just want to take a moment to address those directly and explain how they're informing our thinking this year. One reallocation made last year was the preschool guidance counselor position at Daly. In August, the district made a deliberate decision to prioritize elementary class size, allocating significant resources to that goal, including the addition of 4 elementary teaching positions. The rationale was that the Daly guidance counselor could absorb the preschool caseload, as total enrollment at Daly, inclusive of preschool, is comparable to that of our other elementary schools. The associated FTE was ultimately reallocated to support reduced class sizes at the elementary level. Because this change was implemented during the current school year, there has not been sufficient time or data to evaluate its impact. That being said, at this early stage, there's no indication that a change is needed. We'll continue to monitor the impact of this reallocation as we move forward. The board also discussed the possibility of adding an additional middle school guidance counselor. The rationale was to increase classroom push-in lessons and potentially reduce caseloads. As you know, the middle school currently has 4 guidance counselors, 1 assigned to each house. While increasing classroom-based support is a thoughtful and worthwhile goal, it has to be weighed against other staffing priorities across the district. These include maintaining lower class size, supporting new courses at the high school, providing instructional support to help teachers implement our new curricula, and systematically monitor student achievement. As a result, this proposal, while still important, is not being advanced as part of the current budget cycle. Finally, the board discussed adding an FTE to support a course in financial literacy. At this time, there's still uncertainty regarding how the state education department's graduation requirements will ultimately address financial literacy. It's possible that the requirement could be met through existing coursework. Rather than creating a new mandatory course, we want to explore whether the required content can be embedded into courses students are already taking. This approach may allow us to meet future requirements while preserving flexibility for students to pursue electives aligned to their interest. We will present a full staffing plan at our next board meeting so that you can see the recommendations we're making with respect to the allocation of staff to meet our goals. I'm now going to ask Ms. Manuel to take us through the rollover budget so that we can better understand the amount of money that would be required to pay for the current year programs, staffing, and services at next year's prices. She'll also discuss state aid and our tax cap. Ms. Manuel.
Thank you, Dr. Posse. So the rollover budget you can see here. This is a preliminary estimate of expenditures for next year's budget. Assumes all current staff and programs will carry forward into the new school year. We use trending and historical data to determine expenditure estimates. As this slide reflects, employee benefits are estimated to increase nearly 6% compared to the prior year. This is due almost entirely to increases in our health benefits premiums of about 9%. You can also see that contractual and salary benefits account for 73% of the increase. The second column there shows you the share of the increase, which is kind of interesting. You can also see an increase in the debt service due to borrowing for the energy performance contract coming online. This accounts for 13% of the increase. This slide represents the tax levy threshold. So this is, there's a few factors that are taken into account here, and on the next slide I'll go into the actual calculation. But the tax-based growth factor for Port Washington for this year is at 0.85% in growth. This is a figure that is provided by the Office of Real Property Tax Services. And this is based on the quantity change, such as new construction, newly taxable status of existing property, or measurable improvements to taxable properties within the boundaries of our local government. So last year, this was about a 1.17% increase, so this is slightly below that. So as this slide reflects, the difference in the calculated tax levy limit at this time is $5,427,175, or 3.25% over the 25-26 tax year. This slide provides a more detailed look at the tax levy, looking at last year's levy and then increasing it by the tax-based growth factor. And then there's certain exclusions that come out from there, which is the capital cost. Then we have the 2% tax factor. So this is the lower, of CPI, or 2%. So it's capped at the 2%. And then after that, we add back in certain exclusions for the capital costs. And you'll notice that has increased, and that's related to the debt service, which we discussed earlier for the energy performance contract. This was something that we went into in quite detail yesterday at the Budget and Facilities meeting, so I'm not going to go into all of the figures with everyone. And as discussed also yesterday, these are the figures for the state aid numbers. You'll see that the total general fund, there's a red arrow that goes there in a circle. Everything above here is what is impacting our tax levy, and this is what the voters are really asked to vote on. Underneath, you see the universal pre-K. This is actually grant funding, so it's not something that goes directly to the general fund. So that's why it's kind of below. And you'll see that's where a large increase is. So the governor's proposal allocates only 1% in increased foundation aid. So you can see on the green, the top level, it's 1%, which is really about $136,000, which on a $200 million budget is not significant. And when we have increases of 6% contractually or 9% on our health insurance, it's very difficult for schools to keep up at that pace. Port Washington isn't different. Out of the 673 schools in the state, 461 of us only received a 1% increase. While it is appreciated, we're hoping that when the legislatures come back with their budget proposal, that it'll be a higher percentage of hopefully 2 or 3%. Now we also have expense-based aids where you can see the BOCES aid in pink and also transportation aid in blue and building aid in brown. You'll see that's where we've had significant growth, and that's really related to our aid ratios. So thankfully, we're seeing that account for most of our $1.5 million increase in state aid. Also, to discuss briefly universal pre-K, the governor has proposed increasing the allocation to $10,000 per student. Some districts only receive $5,400. Our district currently receives, I believe, about $6,200 per student. So the details of this are not finalized yet, but we believe that this increase in allocation will help us to offset some of the expenditures that the general fund currently absorbs for universal pre-K. And then eventually we will expand the program once the details are more known. So, but also with this mandate, by 28-29, school districts have to provide universal pre-K to any parents that are asking for it.
Thank you, Ms. Manuel. Let me close by summarizing where we are in the process. Each year, we develop a budget within the context of a complex and evolving financial environment. Our responsibility is to navigate those conditions thoughtfully while protecting the strength of our academic program and positioning the district for long-term success. We're committed to a fiscally responsible budget that operates within the allowable property tax cap. This year's budget reflects significant pressure driven by increased employee benefit costs, which is partially offset by retirements, growth in the tax-based growth factor, and state aid. And as a result, the margin for new spending is limited, and each proposed investment is being evaluated through a disciplined lens focused on impact, sustainability, and alignment with district priorities. At the same time, we're continuing to review our existing budget to improve efficiency and ensure that resources are aligned with our priorities and used effectively. At our next meeting, the budget will come into clearer focus. We plan to present a balanced budget for the board's consideration that reflects deliberate, forward-looking decisions and choices we believe best position the district to meet its priorities and plan responsibly for the future. And as I said, we will present a staffing plan as 75% of our budget is in staffing. We'll present that plan at our March 10th meeting.
Thank you. We can start on this end this time. Start with Ms. Brooks or Ms. Milani, whoever wants to go.
I had a chance to ask lots of questions at yesterday's Budget and Facilities Committee meeting, so I will just thank Dr. Passy and Ms. Manuel for their continued work on this. I look forward to seeing where it goes, and I yield my time.
Ms. Brooks.
So thank you also, and what a sigh of relief that we don't have to look at year over year in terms of the rollover budget and say, we can't even sustain what we had last year. So that's a big, I know we want to improve upon it, but to me, that's a big, having had to go through this process and look at what we would have to shave out. I just have one question. It's about the universal pre-K, and I know it's not a done deal yet, but we had shaved off a section of pre-K, I think it's now 2 years ago, and we built an addition to Daly, and so I don't know if I'm jumping the gun on this, but are we in a position to actually deliver instruction to any parent who wants pre-K in the district? Do we have the facilities to do it? Because I think there was a maximum class, and I know this was discussed a little bit in the budget meeting, that there are districts that just don't have the room, but how does that happen? Is that something we need to worry about?
Yes, it is something we need to worry about. I was recently up in Albany where there were business officials from all over the state, and this was a major topic for all of the schools because, well, it's nice that there's the funding. Trying to do it in 2 years is nearly impossible because you do want to have that opportunity, but schools may not have the facilities. There's some school districts that don't have the CBOs, which are the community-based organizations, who can actually receive these students. And also, a big concern is the wraparound care, which care before the program and care after. So the universal pre-K is only for 5 hours. So a lot of parents they work, so they need to have childcare prior to and afterwards. So even if we did have a facility where those children could be here, we can't provide childcare prior to and after for school district.
So, and just to add on to that, there's still a lot that we don't know about the governor's proposal regarding UPK. I think it'll come into clearer light as we continue going through the budget process and as more guidance comes out from the state education department. Right now, what we're looking to do is we're from a budget standpoint, we are going to make the assumption that a portion of the money that is allocated from the general fund to support UPK will be able to be funded through this increase in grants. We're also simultaneously going to go and meet with our community-based organizations and try to negotiate a package with the community-based organizations regarding a rate, a portion of the money so they can support families in the district. Then, when we receive more guidance from the state, we'll be able to have serious discussions about whether or not we're in a position to expand the number of seats that we offer in-house and whether or not we can expand the number of seats that are offered through the CBOs. So we'll have all of that. I think once we get a little bit more clarity and we get a little bit more guidance from the state education department, but the assumptions that we're making right now we're very comfortable with in terms of the assumption of going from the $6,100 per student that we're receiving to $10,000 per student, and therefore reducing the burden on the general fund, and then we'll take it incrementally from there.
Questions on this end? No? I think it was, okay. Go ahead, Rachel.
It's not a question, it's just a comment. I'm glad Ms. Brooks led with her positivity, because I guess I'm greedy. You're right. That's the right outlook is the positive one of like, oh, this is close, because we've had some really, really, really rough years here, but I also always find it disappointing when we look at our rollover budget and we're already at what our cap is. But I'm looking forward to the future presentations. I wanted to thank you in advance for all the work that I know is going on behind the scenes, because when you say to us that you're confident that you can present something that really enhances curriculum, I know that that's an immense amount of work to figure out where we can have some savings in order to fund the rest of that, and prioritizing what are the things that are going to have an impact on student experience and student education. So I'm looking forward to the future presentations. I don't have any questions at this point. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gilliard, and thank you to all the administrators who worked very hard on this. Any, we're all set. Thank you, Ms. Manuel. Okay. At this time, I'd like to make a motion to approve the December 12th, 2025 Curriculum Committee meeting minutes and the January 20th, 2026 BOE meeting minutes. Is there a second? Ms. Epstein, all in favor? 7-0. 7-0. Yep, the minutes are approved. At this time, we're going to move to committee reports. Before we do that, I want to mention two things. Reminder that, I think this was already reminded, but a reminder that the Curriculum Committee's next meeting is on Friday at 10 a.m. in the CAM Annex. I also wanted to bring up another topic, which is a request of the Policy Committee, and I wondered if the board is in agreement. Ms. Mawani, as everybody knows, has created a spreadsheet showing all of our policies that include requirements for reporting either to the board or otherwise. That was, I'm sure, a lot of work to go through all those policies. I hope you used AI to help, but wow, that's even more impressive. Julie and I had requested that the cabinet review that sheet, and they did so. There's a lot of comments on it. So in discussing with Dr. Posse, we felt that at this stage it would be beneficial to send that document with the comments back to the Policy Committee to see if there are any recommendations that need to be made to the board, modifications of policies, or otherwise. So that's my request, and I want to see if either the committee or the board had any objection to that being the next step with that. Yes?
Do you have a question? Why would it go to policy if these are reports that are required either by law or through policy? Then where is the discretion in
It's a great question, because I think some of the policies are, there's some vaguity or vagueness around what exactly should be reported. There's some questions as to if what is being reported is what's actually meeting the request of the Policy Committee. And then there's some questions as to duplicativeness or if something should be reported or not. So you guys might just look at it and say, no, everything is great. But that was really the request. Is the administration correctly understanding all of the reporting? So is there a cleaner way to define it? Should we be more consistent across the board in how we articulate our reporting requirements? Now that this exercise has been done, should we? And maybe the answer is no, everything is great, and we're just going to keep going on. That's really the question.
I don't know if you want to chime in, but is there anything that the lawyers can look at and say, yep, this is required, yep, this is required, yep, this is required, yep.
Yeah.
And then
I think the answer is yes, but I would ask the Policy Committee to direct that to whoever the bond liaison is, so we can kind of do it all in one step. But I actually think that there's many things the Policy Committee should be outsourcing to them, and I would encourage you guys to do that wherever possible. Yeah.
Why can't we just send it to the lawyers now?
They're not all regular.
We can do it because it's not all. We can do that simultaneously.
So just as a reminder, I did ask for this last year.
And you got it now.
And no, the discussion last year was that it would go to the attorneys, for the attorneys to tell us which were the legally required ones. Ms. Brooks, correct me if I'm wrong.
The spreadsheet lists that up. The spreadsheet lists all that.
So the spreadsheet is already done.
Yeah.
So the legally required ones, in my eyes, what the ask was last year was the attorneys were going to review it. Ms. Melwani did it, so thank you so much for doing it. We know the legally required ones due to that now. So the second question, which was brought up last year, and many trustees told me last year, let's first get the first step done of seeing what the legally required ones were, and then we will review what the discretionary ones are. So would the first step be is policy should just review, or the attorney should just tell us, these are the required ones, you're out of compliance with these 5 policies, adjust these, but we still need a full board discussion on the discretionary ones, is how we kind of discussed it last year.
So is it, just to clarify, that your vote is not to refer to the policy? I just want to understand how you're responding to the question.
You created a question to the policy.
I'm asking.
I think it should go full board.
Okay, so one vote for full board. Okay.
Personally, I would like to review the spreadsheet, and I would like to see the comments and the nature of the questions on the spreadsheet before I weigh in on what our process should be for dealing with it. I'm not convinced that it is for the policy committee, and I do, knowing very intimately which policies are involved and what the discretionary reporting is, I can see a case for a full board discussion for many of them, but I want to see what's there before we come up with a process for this.
It's linked in the agenda report that went out today.
I know,
so-
I did.
so-
Yes,
so we
I did
can
not
ta-
have
we
time
can table
to
this to-
review the 400-line
That's fine. We
spreadsheet
can-
and
if-
comments before we came to the meeting tonight.
That was the recommendation, so if people aren't comfortable with it, we can delay this to the next meeting. Ms. Maloney and Ms. Gilliard, do you have thoughts? Go ahead.
I'm fine with delaying it for the next meeting. I think we should send, to me, the first step would be to send it to the attorneys. I'm assuming that the indication of whether something is required or not came from the policies themselves. So there may be something within the policies that is out of date in terms of whether something is required or not. Therefore, I think that it's worth having attorneys review it all.
I agree, but I would still maintain that typically the policy committee manages the relationship with the attorneys as it relates to the policies. So again, I'm not understanding where the mismatch is as it relates to what Ms. Alvarez had brought up. So I agree with what you're saying. I just think that Ms. Brooks and Dr. Shields can manage that because they have the relationship with the attorney who's handling the policies.
I have no
Yeah.
objection to it. I'm just suggesting before the full board does any work or the policy committee does any work, and I haven't looked at the list, but I'm okay with whatever the majority of the board wants to do probably, that we have attorneys on retainer who are paid to do exactly this. And so if Ms. Brooks wants to put her together with Dr. Shields and they want to forward it to the attorneys, I agree with you. That's right. That's probably
Yeah, that's basically
the
the
right
ask.
thing
They
to
can-
do. I don't think it has to happen in a public policy meeting to direct it that way, though. And I think they should look at all of them because they may have experience about best practices on the ones that are not legally required as well. And we should just get their full input and have it all at once and then have whatever lengthy, boring conversation we're going to have.
Yeah, so this, I mean, this is by definition an administrative task, not for our administration, but for us as a board. This is administrative work, and I would hate to see this take up time from the policy committee's work, because we do have some real work ahead of us over the next couple of months. So with that in mind, I mean, can we review the spreadsheet behind the scenes, identify here are the things we want to ask the lawyers to do, forward it to our attorneys, and then we can present it, I think, to the rest of the board just to say, like, here are the questions we need to talk about as a board with respect to reporting.
That's all we're asking.
That's what the ask is, then I think that I'm on board.
We don't need you to discuss it for 4 meetings. Like,
I really don't.
You guys can take it and handle it, and
Yeah.
that's fine. Okay. So I think we're sending it to the policy committee.
But not to discuss
but
in
not
public.
To be handled administratively.
Right, to be
That's-
handled
That's
administratively.
fine.
Right, because we're not going to change anything behind the scenes. We'll discuss it and put it forward.
Perfect. Okay. Audit committee. Budget committee.
Yes, budget. So at our budgeting committee meeting, you heard today that the foundation aid, while we are appreciative of our 1%, we would love advocacy level at the state, advocacy at our state level. I know last time we talked at federal level, advocacy at the state level for increasing foundation aid from 1% to either 2 or 3%. So we would love for that to happen. And in addition to that, we would love clarification for the universal pre-K expansion, especially in the 28-29, included but not limited to funding flexibility for those increased mandated expenses. Remember, transportation is not covered under any of this funding. Building expansion so we can house people is not covered under any of this funding, and et cetera. So I know that we have empowered our advocacy leaders to talk to the state level. You can, or to talk federal, and I think at the state level it's fine. This can be a letter. The committee did not direct what it should be. We just said these would be the state level advocacy issues that we would recommend.
So just these 2 issues, increasing the foundation aid from 1% to 2 or 3%, And then clarifying the pre-K expansion, especially for the next round, okay. So, no issue. I think then the three of us should decide whether we want to write a letter or meet in person.
Okay.
And that would be, we could meet with Senator Martins, with Assemblyman.
I think we should try to get the
And the
meetings
governor's
either way
office, yeah.
and take it from there. Anyone object to that? So we're going to try to do it anyway? Okay.
Is there a deadline?
We were talking that, so Advocacy Day is this week, right? For school boards to go up on the 11th, but by mid-March, everyone really will be coming together with their final budget. So it would be nice to have this in play before mid-March, I would say, or getting in front of people before then.
Okay. Sounds good. Curriculum.
Be sure to join us Friday morning, where we will get a very, very deep dive into the climate survey with more questions and answers. So please join us 10 o'clock in the CAM annex.
Thank you. Policy and personnel.
Our next meeting is after break. It's on February 27th at 10 a.m. in the annex, and you've all been given a little preview as to what we're going to be discussing there, which is now the ex officio student board member and all the stuff that we've been discussing. So, see you there.
Thank you. Okay. We're now at our consent agenda part of the meeting. Does anybody have anything they wish to pull before I make the motion? Okay. I would like to make a motion to approve items 13.1 through 20.1. Is there a second? Ms. Gilliar, do I see that hand going up for a second? Yeah. All in favor? 7-0. We'd like to recognize the donations that we have tonight. A special thanks to the Sousa HSA for their donations to the Simple Seed Assembly and the Bronx Zoo Trip, Hearts for their donation towards the Daily Review, and the Elise May Program and Blackbound Fund for the Sousa Fund. Okay. We have no old business, no questions from our previous meeting. Does anybody have any new business that they wish to bring up? Okay. This time we'd like to go to our second opportunity for the community to be heard. Nobody is signed in, but we will give the opportunity for anybody. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Hi, I'm Kara Miller. I wasn't anticipating talking tonight. I had a very collaborative, great conversation with Dr. Feeney and Dr. Allen. I'm very appreciative for their time. I want to circle back to the elementary school homework policy. Very interestingly that I found sitting here listening to this conversation is I was one of the few families that did respond to that survey. And I did explicitly write a comment that I felt that the elementary school students do receive too much homework for their age. And I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with the research that between kindergarten and third grade, homework really does not do anything to benefit them academically. And the exception to that is reading 20 minutes a day. And just from, as a parent perspective, when you have children of young children who are in that age group, they don't have the autonomy, at least my kids, they don't have the autonomy to go to school for an entire school day and then sit by themselves to do homework. So that requires me sitting next to them, me checking in with them. And I have 3 kids. I have to make dinner, I have to get them to activities. My spouse works a very demanding job. So it's very hard for me to keep up with 3 kids having that additional work that really doesn't add any educational value for that age group. So I just wanted to share that I did respond to the survey, and I did also comment on that aspect that happened to come up. So whether I just thought I would share that aspect as a parent. So Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any additional speakers? Okay. We're not going to, nobody wants to go back to executive session, right? We're good?
Deb does really, really bad.
Okay. Okay. At this time, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn. Our next meeting is on March 10th. The board will be convening at 6:30 and expected to return from executive session at approximately 7:30. Do I have a second for that motion to adjourn? Ms. Marwani, all in favor? Is that everybody? Everyone? Yeah, yeah. 7-0. We are adjourned. Thank you.